All right, so good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it may be. My name is William Walker with the Georgia Student Finance Commission, your local friendly neighborhood K through 12 outreach representative, and I'm here to talk to you today about financial aid. Financial aid 101, both federal and state aid. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the agenda. So to start, we're going to define what financial aid is. We're going to go through the different types of aid, both federal and state programs as well. We'll also go through the FAFSA in its current form, do a little walkthrough, and then we're going to end with a comparison of the award letters, aka the financial aid packages. Okay, so first things first, what is financial aid? If we're defining it, what is financial aid? Okay, financial aid is money to help you pay for the expenses associated with attending a post-secondary institution. Okay, now, what is a post-secondary institution? It is a college, a university, a 2-year, 4-year private university, private school, junior college, community college, wherever you're trying to attend after you graduate from high school. Okay. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about paying for expenses or paying for costs, we're talking about two separate kind of expenses or costs. We're talking about direct expenses or costs or indirect expenses or costs. Okay. Now, all of this is associated with the cost of attendance. So the best way to look at this, direct costs plus indirect costs equals the cost of attendance. And the cost of attendance is really the meat, the gist of what we're trying to get around to when we're trying to figure out how expensive it may be to attend this school or that school. Okay. Now let's kind of break this down a little further. Okay, so when we're talking about things like direct expenses or direct costs, okay, those are going to be things that hopefully you've already kind of prepared for, you've been thinking about already. Okay, things like tuition and fees, room and board, parking permits. Those are all things, for the most part, the majority of people who are looking at going to college, university, not everybody, but for the most part, the majority of people have kind of thought of as something that they may have to pay for or plan for. Okay. Now, indirect costs, indirect expenses, those are things that you either can't plan for, or hard to plan for, or you haven't planned for. So when you're looking at indirect expenses, okay, and keep in mind direct expenses, those are going to be paid directly to the institution. As the name, direct expenses, direct costs, okay? Indirect expenses, you don't pay that directly to the institution, but they're paid while a student is enrolled, okay, with a certain program or with a certain school. So when we're talking about indirect expenses or indirect costs, we're talking about things like books. Okay, anybody who's a current college student or former college student will tell you books can be anywhere from $100, $1,100, $2,000, $50. It can range, and we're talking about sometimes for just specific books. Okay, rent for off-campus housing. Of course, that's going to be a major indirect expense because you're dealing with having to essentially just live on your own outside of campus housing. You're getting your own apartment, so that's going to be a major indirect expense, of course, if you're looking at going that route. Now, school supplies. Believe it or not, certain majors, certain programs, when go into certain programs at certain colleges and universities, you're going to have to get certain school supplies or certain kits to go along with your major. Nursing students, cosmetology students, you can't just buy books. You got to have to buy actual supplies. So that's going to be a major indirect expense as well. And of course, groceries, you're not going to actually be eating at the dining court all the time. At some point in time, you're going to be doing a little bit of cooking, while you're in your dorm or apartment or what have you. Okay. All right, now keep in mind, okay, when we talked about cost of attendance before, indirect costs or direct costs plus indirect costs equals the cost of attendance. Keep in mind that when we're talking about the cost of attendance, we're really kind of talking about an estimate or a ballpark figure. Okay. I'm a former admissions rep myself. We always kind of like to, compete with each other by saying how low our tuition is. Okay. But again, as you just learned, that's only part of the equation. The cost of attendance is really the totality of how much it's going to cost to attend a specific institution. Okay. And that's why you really want to get, at least an idea as to how much it might cost to go whatever your dream school may be. Okay. But again, 9 times out of 10 or all the time, it's going to be an estimate, a ballpark figure of what it could cost. Okay. Okay, so obviously, if you're a college student or college graduate, you're going to use some type of financial aid, but it's always good to kind of break down what those different kinds of financial aid may be. Okay, so let's kind of break that down in different varieties right here. Okay, so when I was a high school student, the assumption for me was, if you're getting financial aid, that's just money from the government. That's just like a loan or something like that. I wasn't aware of the different forms, and you're seeing those right here. So when it comes to financial aid, of course, loans is a part of that, but it's also scholarships, it's also grants, and it's also work study programs. Okay, and so you're kind of looking down beneath that. Those are the sources of that aid. Okay, so the federal government, you're going to have access to the work study programs. You're going to have access to, of course, the subsidized, unsubsidized loans, Pell Grants, things of that nature. Okay. Now, here in Georgia, state government, we also are going to have loans available to students. But of course, we have grants and we have the scholarship program, which is the Hope Scholarship Program as well. Okay. We have quite a few other programs as well. And I encourage you to go to gafutures.org to kind of research some of the different options for yourself. But, to name a few, of course, those are the ones that tend to come to mind. Okay. Now, colleges and universities, they're going to offer their own scholarships, their own scholarship programs as well. Especially if you're going to a private school, private university, but state university as well. So make sure you're looking at that institutional aid. Okay. Private foundations and service organizations, those are things kind of like the Boys and Girls Club of Atlanta, Hands On Atlanta, the United Way, the Scholarship Academy. All these kind of organizations are going to provide, different sorts of aid, typically scholarships and things of that nature, for the different participants as well. Now, employers, private companies, that could be mom and dad or, guardian or what have you. But that could also be you. If you're working right now, that you obviously might want to be looking at some different opportunities if your organization or company allows for that. And, they may, you probably want to go ahead and look into that. Publix, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Burger King has a scholarship. You don't even have to work there. You might surprise yourself, students, by if you're working right now, about finding out some different kind of either scholarship opportunities or tuition reimbursement or some kind of program that the company that you work for may have. Okay. Okay, so obviously there's different types of financial aid. We're gonna kind of break that down real quick. Of course, we're talking about how well you're doing with specific courses. Then we're talking about the Hope Scholarship, and determining whether or not you're gonna get that or not. Need-based Pell Grant, that's always gonna be based on the select number of questions that you're answering, throughout the FAFSA: family size, income, savings, inputting your tax information, those go to telling the college, university, wherever you're trying to go to, whether or not you have a large financial need, a minimal financial need, somewhere in between. So that's going to go towards kind of, altering that Pell Grant, whether it be good or bad. Non-need based Hope Grant, we'll go through that here in a few, but it's going to be something if you're looking at maybe like a certificate or diploma program. You can go ahead and skip all the way down to a savings plan, okay? Path to College 529. Every single state has a 529 savings plan for college. We just call ours the Path to College. Okay, so hopefully you've gotten that started. If not, you can look at that maybe for a younger sibling. Traditional savings works as well, but just another good way to kind of reduce those college costs as well. Okay, so obviously we're talking about money for college. The best kind of money for college is money that you don't have to repay. And I was going to be talking about scholarships or grants. Now, when it comes to a scholarship, you're really talking about a type of financial aid that's going to be awarded based on GPA or test scores, but don't let that discourage you because there are all kinds of scholarships out there. Okay. They got scholarships that if you're left-handed, if you're ambidextrous, if you have a twin, if you made a prom dress out of duct tape, believe it or not, that's an actual scholarship I've heard about. If you're vegetarian or maybe you're like a first generation college student, whether maybe you're like a racial or ethnic minority, there's all kinds of scholarships out there, more than I could ever list. And so if you're saying to yourself, I might need 2, 3,000, 4,000 or more to pay for college or to cover a gap in funding, you need to make sure you're exhausting those scholarships. Now, grants, those tend to be more need-based. So again, that's going to be based off that high financial need. The only way, again, college, university is going to be able to know if you have that financial need is by completing that FAFSA. So you want to make sure you get that done. So of course, the obvious question though is, how do I find scholarships? The best source is going to be, of course, GA Futures. Okay, we have a scholarship search engine on there. More scholarships to the Department of Education. So if you are looking for scholarships, make sure your student is using their Georgia Futures profile. Okay, now let's go ahead and go through the federal aid program so we can kind of break down some more about this FAFSA. Okay, now when we are talking about the FAFSA and the requirements for the FAFSA, it's important to keep in mind that we're talking about the student's requirements. We're not talking about the parent. These are the requirements for the student if they want to fill out FAFSA and get FAFSA money. Okay, so as you can see right here, pretty basic information. Parents, make sure your student knows their social security number. A lot of students in high school typically don't know that, so make sure they have that information. And students, if you're not able to get that information, maybe from mom or dad or guardian or what have you, you can go ahead and speak to your guidance counselor. They can actually look at that information as well. Okay, so in terms of the Pell Grant money, or what we're looking at in terms of what's going to be awarded this time around. So we're looking this time around at $6,495 for the 2021-2022. Okay, so that's kind of the max amount of money that we're looking at. Now, obviously, when I say this, the assumption is, for everybody, that's what I'm trying to get for Pell Grant when I fill out the FAFSA. Everybody's not going to get that. Again, it's based off of, a student's high financial need. When you complete that FAFSA, it tells the government if you need that full amount, or maybe you need something less than that. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about this here in a few, but that EFC, expected family contribution, that really is the thing that determines whether or not you get this full amount or not. And you can't control it. You just got to fill out the information, complete it, as you normally would, and see kind of what comes out of it. Okay. An additional grant you have down below there, the FSEOG, up to $4,000, but you want to keep in mind, again, Pell Grant recipients are going to receive priority for this. So we're going to see again how this all breaks down a little bit towards the end. Okay, so the Teach Grant, also a great program. We're always trying to get more teachers. If you are, you have a degree, could be working towards a degree, could be a grad student, doesn't matter, up to $4,000. Obviously have to be agreed again to be a full-time teacher. But if you decide, of course, while you're in the program that it's not something that you're really into, it'll simply become a loan. Okay. Okay, so work study program. I always meet a lot of students who have plans on working while they're in college. And so if you plan on working while you're in college, consider this as an option. I did work study when I was in college. It's a great opportunity to, for one, complete your schoolwork and have time to do that, and also be making some money as well. You can be doing anything from tour guide, working at a library. You can be working in an admissions office or working at the registrars, pulling off documents for students and getting transcripts in. It could be a variety of different things. Looks great on a resume, guaranteed to earn a minimum wage. And again, really just, and if you've talked to anybody who's worked work study, it really is a great opportunity to kind of get your schoolwork done. Okay, so loans, the big L word. Nobody wants to talk about loans, but unfortunately, it is a fact of life. College gets more expensive every single year, and you're gonna have to have options, of course, to afford that college education. Some loans are better than others, in my opinion. So let's kind of break this down real quick. So direct subsidized loan. Okay, so if you had to have a loan, in my opinion, this is the kind of loan you would want. This is the loan that I have. Typically going to be, it's available for undergraduate students who have that high financial need. So typically for people who are already Pell Grant recipients, might have the option to utilize this as well. The big reason as to why this is better or not as bad, I guess I would say. Interest is paid by the government while you're enrolled. And of course, the interest rate is a 3.73. Now, you want to keep in mind that with direct subsidized and unsubsidized, regardless of whether it's, subsidized, unsubsidized, the institution, the college, university, wherever you're going to, they determine the amount of money you receive. Okay, so I always like to tell students that if you've kind of reached the point where you don't have enough funding for college or whatnot, it might be a good time for you to either A, of course, look at different scholarships, and hopefully you've already been doing that, but also B, sit down with a financial aid rep and see if there's additional aid that they can, they can give you. Okay, so direct unsubsidized, as you can see, has the exact same interest rate right there, 3.73. Typically, that's the same. So whether it be unsubsidized, subsidized, same interest rate. Big difference, though, is the student is responsible for paying the interest for this loan right here. Okay. Now, I also want to make sure that if you're a grad student, you're looking at becoming a grad student, this is a loan that you're eligible for. Okay, and I will say that a family member of mine was looking at going into the accounting program at a local university, and she had the entire cost of attendance for her program covered within this unsubsidized loan. Okay, so she was very grateful. Obviously, whether your thoughts of loans are good or bad, they are a fact of life when it comes to going to college. But again, if you're not trying to use loans, max out on those scholarships, do what you have to do. Okay, so if you're talking about loans and you're talking about it in a negative connotation, I'd have to probably say that you're probably going to be referring to a loan like this. Okay, and that's going to be the direct plus loan. Now, this is not necessarily a bad loan, but there are certain stipulations that may kind of give people pause. So, of course, the interest rate's at 6.28. That's higher than the unsubsidized and subsidized loans. But also, as the name would suggest, this loan is going to be for the parent. At least one parent will be the borrower, and it is based off good credit history. So if you got loans that are not in good standing right now, parents, this might be something that your student is not going to be able to utilize. Now, let's say if that does occur and your student is not able to utilize this loan, there are other options for that student. Okay, so you'll see right here, obviously there's going to be certain loan limits to the different subsidized, unsubsidized loans that you're going to receive. So you see here with this first graph, a freshman student, they're going to start off with that maximum amount of 5,500. There's going to increase for every subsequent year after that. That's for if you're eligible for a plus loan. Okay, now if you're not eligible for a plus loan, you've been denied that plus loan, you'll see here that this student is given additional unsubsidized loan money to make up for that drop off. Okay, so that's enough of the federal program. Let's go ahead and go through the state programs real quick. Hopefully this is a refresher course for most people, but either way, when we're talking about the HOPE program, it's good to also make sure we keep in mind paid for by the Georgia Lotto. So every Powerball, Mega Millions, scratch off ticket that gets sold goes towards helping a student here in Georgia afford to go to college. Okay, so you're seeing the different programs that are going to fall underneath that. And the requirements, okay, some similarities, I guess, with the federal aid. A key difference with the federal aid from years past is that they've often required if you are a male and 18, if you want to get FAFSA funds, you got to sign up for selective service. Okay, so this time around, they actually dropped that requirement. So no selective service, aka the draft sign up, is necessary. But if you're trying to get state aid, you do still have to sign up for selective service. So if you are 17 years and 3 months, I believe you can pre-register on the website. But if you're trying to get Hope Money, males, make sure you're signed up for selective service. Everything else, pretty basic requirements, as you're hopefully already aware of. Make sure the school that you're trying to go to, institution, what have you, accepts Hope funds. Okay, so there's the list of the schools here in Georgia that accept Hope funds. We have that list on our website as well. So if you need to kind of go back and check, you can always check the website. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the Hope Scholarship real quick. So when we're talking about the Hope Scholarship, okay, we're talking about the student requiring, or the student requiring, the program requires a student to have a 3.0 high school Hope GPA. Okay, now what do I mean by a Hope GPA? I mean your core courses, math, English, science, social studies, foreign language. Okay, now you also want to make sure you have your rigor courses as well, and we're going to have those listed here. AP, IB, dual enrollment courses, excuse me, advanced math, science courses as well. If you have questions, comments, concerns about this, two things you can do. First of all, make sure you speak to your counselor, your academic counselor, to make sure you're on track. Secondly, make sure you check your Hope GPA profile. Okay, and again, we'll have the list of your rigor credits on there, as long as, of course, we have those transcripts that have been sent from your high school. Okay, now along with that, or with that, we're having a look at that right here. So of course, gafutures.org is the website. We've revamped it since, I guess, the last time I did this presentation. So kind of a new look right here. But again, same old, just go to my GA Futures, log in, and you'll have access to this right here, my high school Hope GPA, which is going to give you, as you can see here, a more detailed kind of look at what you're dealing with when it comes to the Hope GPA. So as you can see right here, this student here has a 3.789, has the 4 rigor credits that are required. If they have the the required SAT or ACT scores, this student will be in line for that Zell Miller scholarship. Okay, now let's say you are a student and you graduated and you're in college, you got the Hope and you're feeling good. Keep in mind, you still got to maintain a 3.0 college Hope GPA if you're going to keep that Hope. Okay, now we're going to check that at the end of every spring semester. Now, fear not, if you lose the Hope once, you can gain it back, but only once. Okay, so if you lose it twice, that's a done deal. Okay. Again, check all that information with your GA Futures or my GA Futures profile. Okay, so make sure whether you're in high school or college, it'll always be relevant for you to check that profile. Again, make sure you keep in mind that we're the only ones that calculate that Hope GPA, whether you're in college or high school, it doesn't matter. But we do that, of course, with those transcripts that we need. High school dual enrollment courses, we don't include that in the calculation for the college Hope GPA. You're a high school student taking a high school program that allows you to take college courses, so we don't include that in terms of that College Hope GPA. Okay, so the Zell Miller Scholarship, if you had to get a scholarship and it cover a good amount of money, that full tuition for an in-state public institution, you're talking about the Zell Miller. Okay, and this is the requirements. You can either be a Val or a Sal and meet the minimum Hope, or you can get a 3.7 with test scores of 1200 SAT or a 26 on the ACT. Now, same as the Hope, you got to maintain a certain kind of college Hope GPA to keep the Zell Miller. So that's going to be a 3.3. Now, big difference with the Hope and the Zell Miller. With the Hope, you can gain that while you're in high school or while you're coming out of high school, or you can gain the Hope while you're in college. With the Zell Miller, you can only get that coming out of high school. You can't all of a sudden get it while you're in college. Okay, so maintain that 3.3. You can lose the Zell and gain it back once, lose it twice, same as the Hope. It's not going to come back for you. Okay. But let's say if you were to lose the Zell Miller and that college GPA, college Hope GPA drops to like a 3.0, at that point you lose the Zell, but you would gain the Hope. So it kind of lessens the blow a little bit. But, again, keep in mind that we're going to check at the end of every spring semester. So, preferably don't lose the Hope or Zell Miller at all. Okay, so just to kind of summarize some of this real quick, as you can see here, you can't already have a bachelor's to be involved in the Hope Scholarship or Zell Miller Scholarship Program. If you're a high school student that's about to graduate, when you graduate, you get 10 years. That's an increase from 7, 10 years to use Hope funds. Okay, you want to make sure you don't go over the max attempted hours, 127 for semester, 190 for quarter, and of course, make sure you meet the GPA requirement. Okay, so for the grants here real quick. So if you're looking at grants, you're saying to yourself you're looking at a certificate or diploma program. Okay, so a lot of different schools might have that. You know, if you're looking at going to a tech school, a lot of students that go to technical colleges here in Georgia will utilize some of these programs right here. Okay, so essentially you maintain a 2.0, a C average, and that's the requirement right there for that Hope grant. Okay, and we like to say with the Hope Scholarship, it covers roughly 75% of the tuition. Same is going to be said of the Hope grant. Okay, again, this is going to be if you're looking at a certificate or diploma program. Okay, with the Zell Miller grant, it's going to cover the full tuition for that certificate or diploma program, but the requirement is going to be a 3.5 College Hope GPA. Okay, and again, of course, you need to initially be a Hope grant recipient to receive it. Again, that's a 2.0, but covers that full tuition. If you know anything about certificate diploma programs here in Georgia, so they're already relatively inexpensive, or at least not as expensive as a bachelor's degree. So you're getting even more savings with these grants. Okay, the Hope Career Grant, that's going to go in addition to all these, the Hope Grant and the Zell Miller Grant as well, or at least if you are a recipient, you are eligible for the Hope Career Grant specifically based off of what program you're interested in. Okay, you got to, again, as I said before, you got to initially be a Hope Grant or Zell Miller Grant recipient, but no other requirement other than that. It's all based off what kind of program. This is just a snapshot. We have an extensive list on our website. We're talking about everything from, CDL truck driving to maybe you have an interest in film, maybe you like working with, little kids, babies, toddlers, things of that nature. It kind of runs the gamut between the different programs. Hope GED Grant, another great program. If you know anybody who is interested in that program, something that they can utilize and go ahead and kind of get back on their feet and get back in school. And just to kind of summarize, okay, because I have a lot of students, of course, looking at private institutions, private schools. The Hope Scholarship covers roughly 70 to 75% for a public in-state institution. If you're looking at going private, it's going to be $2,152 for the Hope, $2,808 for the Zell Miller. Hope Career Grant, again, if you're looking at that, 9 hours or more, looking at $500 or more, or $500 or more, you're looking at $500. For 9 hours or more for CDL truck driving program, those big semi trucks, you're looking at $1,000 per truck driving program. Now, some additional programs you might be interested in. Again, you want to make sure you're looking at gafutures.org and you're really looking at all the different programs that we have, the scholarship opportunities. It's a website geared towards college access, so hopefully you're utilizing it as much as you can, especially if you're seniors right now. Hero Scholarship's a great scholarship if you're like an EMT, paramedic, things of that nature, if your parents for that, excuse me. Reach Scholarship if you have anybody who's a younger sibling in middle school, someone to look at. We have a ton of different programs on there. So again, gafutures.org, and then you want to go to the state aid applications and forms. Then once you do that, of course, you have a listing of some of these programs that I was discussing before. Make sure you're also looking at this right here, the GSFA app. That is going to be the application specifically for state aid. Okay, now, of course, the question is, do I have to do this to get state aid? Not necessarily. If you do the FAFSA, you meet the requirements, you still have that eligibility, of course, to get state aid. But this is a great application to do because it's good for 7 years, one done. You only have to do it once. Okay, and there's definitely some appreciation, I would think, in only having to do this once, as opposed to doing the FAFSA, which you have to do every single year. So sometimes it's good to have other options. Different things can happen with the FAFSA, especially if you procrastinate. I would recommend everybody going ahead and completing the state application. Okay. All right. So the FAFSA. Let's go ahead and look at what we need to do to complete this FAFSA. Okay. All right, so when we're looking at the FAFSA, of course, the very first thing you want to keep in mind, it opens up October 1st. So that is the date that if you are a senior about to graduate, you can go ahead and complete that FAFSA. Very first step is making sure you have that FSA ID. So you're gonna need that to sign into your FAFSA as well as to complete that FAFSA. And if you're dependent student, you live with your parents, so on and so forth, make sure at least one of your parents also has the FSA ID as well. Okay, now the application is a free application. Okay, so you have two ways of doing it. You either go to FAFSA.gov, complete it on the website, or you can use the app, all one word, My Student Aid. Okay, if you do everything on your phone like I do, definitely look at downloading that app. I've used it, multiple times before. Never had an issue with it, at least myself. So might want to be looking at that as an option. So you're looking at right now, again, October 1st is always the start date. Depending on what fall term, spring term, or summer term you're looking at going to will depend or will change the kind of application you're looking at completing. But keep in mind, regardless, you're obviously going to need tax returns. Parents, students, if you're dependent on your parents, they're going to need tax returns always 2 years prior. Okay, it's always going to be 2 years prior to that first academic term for that FAFSA. So when you have the FAFSA 2022, 2 years prior, it's going to be the 2020 tax returns. If you're doing a 2021, 2022 application, you're going to need the 2019 tax returns. Okay, so what do you need to complete the FAFSA? Okay, I get, a lot of different questions for all kind of different family situations. 9 times out of 10, just that 1040 Social Security number, obviously make sure you know that, but it's good to just have bank statements, investment records, anything that's going to kind of paint a clear financial picture, for whatever school you're applying to in terms of hopefully getting that full Pell Grant, money. Now, again, the very first step when you're completing the FAFSA is you got to make an FSA ID. So you want to go to FAFSA.gov and click create an FSA ID link. Okay. Basically, you're going to make a username, password, you're going to enter in your email, but you also want to make sure you put in the demographic questions or you complete those demographic questions and the challenge questions as well. Key thing you also want to make sure you do, confirm the cell phone and email address. I have a large number of students and parents who 9 times out of 10 forget the FSA ID. And so they have to kind of find ways to see if they can find it on their phone or if they wrote it down somewhere, and then they have to reset their profile. Make sure you confirm the cell phone and email address. That way, if you lose it, you can still get access again to that account. So basic tips, of course, with the FAFSA being a federal form and that being attached to your taxes and all those things, you probably don't want to share this information with anybody. I recommend you don't. Don't share the FSA ID with anybody. Keep that to yourself. Keep that FAFSA information to yourself as well. Okay, so little walkthrough here. Again, as the FAFSA in its current form, there were some changes that were supposed to come down the pipeline, but never quite materialized. But still be on the lookout for any and all changes. FAFSA changes every year, technically, when you're talking about Pell Grant money and loans, things of that nature. So you always want to make sure you're aware of any changes to the FAFSA. So very first thing you're going to do is complete the student demographics, basic information, first name, last name, of course, social security number. Key thing though, make sure students put first bachelor's degree. Okay, make sure you're putting first bachelor's, even if you're taking college courses on a high school level, you're still going for your first bachelor's. And you want to make sure, of course, you put never attended first year. Okay, if you're looking at doing work study, also make sure you notate that here as well. Okay, now school selection. Okay, you can have up to 10 colleges you can put on your FAFSA. You can also put some additional colleges on there as well if you follow these instructions listed here. If you don't know what kind of college you want to go to, you can search via state, you can search via city, but again, up to 10 colleges. And even if you just have your heart set on one, pick some local options as well, pick some backup schools as well, just in case. Okay, so dependency status. Okay, so this is, basic information that has to be asked because the government needs to determine, or the college university kind of needs to determine whether or not this student is a high financial needs student or not. And, if a student is independent, living by themselves, homeless, any of those things, of course, that's going to significantly change the financial aid picture. So make sure that students are completing this completing this as best they can. Okay, make sure you're paying attention to the questions. Um, Sometimes parents kind of get this confused with themselves and think, "Oh, marital status. Of course, I'm married." So make sure you complete this information as best you can. There's been issues before in the past where students have been disowned by their parents, and the parents kind of figured out, oh, we could disown our kid, and they could max out on financial aid. Believe it or not, it's been in the news before. So, the government's aware of that. And of course, that's plenty of issues if you're involved in that. So just make sure you complete this information correctly. Okay. All right. So again, another dependency question. I just want to touch on this because students, if you're completing this FAFSA by yourself, still make sure you put, I'll provide information about my parents. Like if your parents are not physically with you, like maybe they're at work or they're away or another room or something. If you are an independent student, of course, but I am unable to provide information. But if you live with your parents, you're dependent on your parents, they're just not right now with you completing the FAFSA, still make sure I will provide information about my parents. Okay, so this graph, basic graph they have on the FAFSA website. If you're like I guess you'd call it like a mixed family, maybe your parents are divorced or whatnot. It really just kind of breaks down how you complete that FAFSA. Easiest way to kind of figure this out is if the student lives with the mom majority of the time, they're going to use mom's information. If it's dad, they're going to use dad's information. If it's a 50-50 split, the amount of time the kid spends with, at that point, we kind of start getting into who's been providing more financial support over the last 12 months or so. Okay. But again, for the most part, whoever the kid stays with the majority of the time is the information we are going to use. Okay. A lot of times parents are saying, oh, this person claimed that person on taxes, so on and so forth. Again, it's all about who the student stays with the majority of time. Okay. Now this tool right here, basic tool, data retrieval tool, as the name suggests, pulls information from your IRS tax return, excuse me, and then puts it onto your FAFSA. Okay, it really just makes the process easier for you. If you decide to yourself you don't want to do this or you can't, you're simply going to enter the information in manually. Okay, so this is going to be towards the end. So at this point, you've done the student demographics, you've picked the schools, you've completed dependency status questions, and then the parents have also completed their demographic and financial information. So you're going to go ahead and sign and submit, use that FSA ID, and complete that thing, okay? Parents, if you have multiple kids in college, you don't make a new FSA ID, you keep the same one. So again, just go ahead and sign that, both student and parent, and submit it. Okay. Keep in mind that if you are, let's say if the student is a U.S. citizen, but the parents are not. Okay. Again, if the student is a citizen, meets those requirements for federal eligibility, you can still go ahead and complete that FAFSA, but you will need to print and what is it? You need to print it out and sign the FAFSA, and then it'll have a link you can click to actually it'll give you instructions on where you're going to need to send that to. Okay. If in that situation, if the parent has a tax ID number, they're going to make sure they utilize that tax ID number to again print, sign, and submit that FAFSA. So again, if you're mixed documented, you can still complete that FAFSA. Okay. So the EFC, we kind of mentioned this a little bit before. Again, when you're completing the FAFSA, a bunch of questions are going to be asked, but it's going to spit out a number, and the number is going to be this EFC, expected family contribution. As you can see right here, this is just an example, but for this student, if you have an EFC of all zeros, that's going to mean that student's going to get that full Pell Grant. Okay, so again, everybody's not going to get the full Pell Grant, unfortunately, because it's all based off of financial need. So if you have a 10 or 100 on there or 200, that doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get any money. You'll still get some money, but it's not going to be the full amount. Okay. You might want to say to yourself, how much money is it going to be? You're going to figure that out once you get that award letter. We're actually going to see that here in a quick second. Again, when you complete that FAFSA, you're gonna get two emails, but one of those emails is gonna be in relation to your student aid report. Keep in mind that you can look at your student aid report after you submit this FAFSA, but it'll also be sent to you about 3 to 5 days, and it's gonna look like this right here. So as you can see right here, again, you can look this up once you complete the FAFSA, or you can have it sent to you. But just a basic summarization of the information you put on the your FAFSA form. Key thing here, if your EFC has a notation, you want to make sure you haven't been selected for verification, which is a scary word that essentially just means that the school has a college, university you applied to. They've seen something on your FAFSA that doesn't look quite right to them or doesn't make some sense to them, so they're requesting additional documentation, okay? This is not a problem, but it can become a problem if you decide to wait. You want to make sure you complete this and get that process done as quickly as possible, because that's going to affect your aid. That's going to affect how much money you're going to utilize to pay for college. Okay, now, just had a student who had really a horrible financial situation going on in their life, and I made sure they knew about special circumstances. Special circumstances is really just a way for a financial aid office at a college university to determine, whether or not, based off this horrible situation of something that's changed your financial outlook, what other options might be out there for you. Okay, now every school has a different process for this, but if you have a situation like somebody, in your family, like your mom or your dad got critically injured, and obviously that changed your financial picture, or maybe somebody, passed away or left or abandonment, whatever it may be, if it changes that financial aid picture significantly, make sure you speak to that financial aid office at the college university that you plan on attending. Okay, so finally, we're going to go ahead and go through the financial aid packages, aka the award letters. Okay, now you want to keep in mind that when you're looking at award letters, they're going to come to you in the mail, or I guess nowadays you might email them. I know back in my day, they just mailed it to you, and they all looked different. Okay, so at the end of the day, you want to just kind of compare and contrast what is the best financial option. Now, everybody's going to have their favorite schools, favorite programs, but at the end of the day, we're trying to save money. At least that's what I'm preaching to you right now. So we want to go ahead and see kind of what the better option is. Okay, so keep in mind that every award letter is going to have essentially the same information, and that's going to be how much it costs to attend the institution, what kind of financial aid the institution itself is going to provide, and then of course what quotation marks, the amount of money the family is going to be trying to contribute, as well as some additional money. So here's the information right here. Okay, so here is the comparison. Okay, so obviously these are fictional colleges, fictional universities, but they are based off of real award letters here in the state of Georgia. Okay, so let's kind of break this down real quick. So when we're looking at this, we can kind of see that two different universities, two different colleges, two very different costs. Okay, Gotham, just looking at the different colleges, Gotham is definitely the more expensive school. Okay, when the student completed their completed their FAFSA, their EFC was 1,000. So what that's going to mean is they're going to take the EFC of 1,000, subtract it from the estimated cost of attendance, and that's going to be the financial need. That's going to be the number that we have to reach with the additional aid that we have. Okay, so obviously, like we said, Gotham is more expensive. So let's kind of break this down real quick. The student here did get some Pell Grant money, only of 1,000 on the EFC, so they're definitely going to get some money. Now that came out to be $5,395, not the full, obviously, but a significant amount in my opinion. Okay. This student was a Hope Scholarship recipient. Obviously, that breaks down differently for the different colleges, but like I said before, roughly covers about 70 to 75% of the tuition. Okay, of the tuition. Again, not the cost of attendance, of the tuition. So with Gotham, that came out to be about $7,680. Where at Paisley, that was $2,670. Okay. Now the student also did some volunteer work and was very, active in the church. So that's $2,000 from the volunteer organization and $400 from the church. They can use at either Gotham or Paisley, whichever one they decide to go to. And then, some additional things like Gotham had a band. offered advanced scholarships. That's $2,000 additional for this student right here. And then, of course, with Paisley, the student applied for a federal work study job and got it. So if they decide to go to Paisley, that's an additional $1,580 for them as well. So as you can see below, they have loan opportunities with both colleges. I know in my opinion, Paisley obviously is the better option. Got everything paid for and everything taken care of. More than enough money, as you can see down here, to cover that $18,185. But if we're looking at Gotham, total amount of aid, you're looking at $22,975. That's not going to cover $27,000. So that student, if they decide to go to Gotham, is going to have to look at some other way of coming up with some additional money, or try and maybe reduce expenses or something. Okay. All right. So best order of aid. Okay, and we're talking about reducing expenses. You can do that a variety of different ways, whether it be through textbooks or utilizing things like Chegg. Just making sure you're not spending unnecessary money on things that you don't need. But when we're talking about accepting aid, the best order for aid, scholarship and grants got to come first, of course, followed by work study. Free money is always the best money, so that's obviously going to be number one. Student loans is going to be number three, though. Okay, can't get around it. Sometimes you need loans to pay for things, especially when we're talking about going to college. State government college loans is going to be fourth. We really don't want you using private loans at number 5 at all. But we understand that people got to do what people got to do sometimes. So private loans, that's an option for you if that's something that you're interested in. Some additional resources here. So you want to make sure, of course, GA Futures will be your one-stop shop for college access. We have additional links on there as well, FAFSA.gov as well as studentaid.gov. Make sure you're utilizing the website. It's here for you. Technically, you paid for it, so you're a state resident. Make sure you're utilizing that website right there, gafutures.org. Okay? Lastly, make sure you go ahead and set up an account if you haven't. Majority of students I'm speaking to, I'm sure have, but if you haven't, speak to your counselor. Make sure you get that set up as soon as you can. We have all kinds of media and content out there. So check out our Instagram, check out our Facebook. We have webinars on the website. So just make sure you kind of take all that in as well. And then, of course, the map. If you have any additional questions, make sure you reach out to me. Have my email listed there as well as my number. And then, if you have any family, friends in other parts of the state, make sure they reach out to the rep as well. So again, this is William with your Financial Aid 101 presentation. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me. And hope you all are doing well, and good luck out there. Have a great day.